So I remember I was a part of this spiritual organization at one point in time, and I was kind of new to it, so I was kind of still, like wrapped up into my little hustle. I was out here paper chasing, I guess you could say, and out here getting this money, and instead of letting it attract me the money, so I didn't understand that science at the time. But I remember asking the Grand Sheik at the time. I was like, "Yo, Sheik, like, how can you use some of this spirituality and all this mysticism to attract like some money for yourself?" Because I remember at the time, I mean, don't get me wrong, the Sheik, he was taken care of. I mean, he had he had a little business, he had stuff going on, but at the time, I grew up around D-boys and people that 16, 17 years old driving around with Benzes with rims that cost $10,000 and stuff like that on them. So I'm like, yo, like, how can you get that? Like, I mean, like, how can you use these sciences to get something like that? And he basically, he was cool with, well, he knew I was young, so I mean, he was understandable about my question. He said that his reply was that the ethers that are associated with money and material things are very murky, very murky. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. On the last episode, I spoke on how you can essentially break out of past life karmic patterns and create your own will. And you can basically pretty much do without will. That's where I was coming from in that particular episode. And I have another episode that's coming after this one to kind of give you a few steps in how to do that. But on this episode, I kind of want to focus on and address kind of like materialism for the most part, but it's going to start off kind of spiritual to help you guys to understand like what exactly is materialism. So in order to really like, get into shifting your karma and things of that nature, you have to understand the ethers. You have to fully understand what ether is. If you look up the term ether, they'll say it's like a gas, pretty much. But it's really like an element that a lot of people really don't understand. I mean, as you know, gas can't be seen. A lot of times most gases are invisible. Sometimes you can sense them, but ether is more than a gas. We're talking about like spiritual ether here. I like to kind of compare ether as the combination of all elements: air, earth, water, and fire. And this is how you get ether. It's a combination of all of those particular elements, and it's crystallized in its own, in its own realm. I'm not trying to get too scientific because, I'm not a scientist when I consider fact like I am. But I'm talking to you about my understanding of ether based upon what I've studied from a few scientific books and things of that nature, and from just understanding spirituality. Like, ether is supposed to be like what makes your soul burn. So this is kind of like the flame, like I was talking about in another video a few episodes back. Like, this is the flame that causes you to be alive, to be animated, to keep the water flowing throughout your body, to keep the blood flowing, This is the flame that causes your skin to shed every so often. And, you become a new being, your cells to transmutate. This is essentially the element that's responsible for that. So this governs all the elements of your body, the fire, your passions, your desires in life. All of this is based on ether. So I was building with, particular Grand Sheik, like I said, and this is going to get economical, so I have to break down the ethers to you first. So in order to understand the ethers, you have to now understand and get into the concept of the creation and fall of man. How did we get here? See, we descended to this plane. The way they kind of teach it, based upon what I've studied from the Kabbalah, is that we were vibrating at a very fast pace. We were in the realm of existence, not the realm of creation. When we first originally were original etheric beings, we existed in the realm of existence, right? And what we had to do is that we had to slow down our vibration to get to this material state. And in us slowing down our vibration, we existed on various different etheric planes before getting to the material plane. And these are things you have to understand when you start to get into understanding what kind of will you want to create for or write for yourself. Because remember, whatever you write, this is magic. They call it holy writ. You essentially, like when you say you're doing a ritual, you can say you're doing a rite or a writ. So this is called holy writ. Write for yourself. Whatever script you write for yourself, you become bound to the karma associated with that. Unless you find a way to recreate, to erase what you've written and recreate that. But that's very hard to do. So you have to choose when you start to create new things that you may not have experienced. You have to decide which etheric level you want to create on. So I'm going to break down the etheric levels or the etheric planes. And the first etheric plane that we existed on when we started falling, we existed in what's called the blue ethers. These are the blue ethers. And the blue ethers is the realm where, so how many of you may have heard of Watchers? I know many of you out there have heard of the Watchers. These particular beings that don't really take a side. These are spirits that they don't side either way with anything. They just simply observe, record, and at the end of the day even judge lesser creation. So they exist in what's called the blue ethers. This is what we were first. We were analysts. We were judges. We were people that took surveys almost. But we didn't take a side based on the data that we collected. We just simply collected the data for research purposes. And you have to remember this too. I want to slide this in there, is that you have to remember everything in creation is a circle. So when I say when we first started incarnating, you have to remember there were always beings incarnating in the physical realm. Creation is infinite. This has been going on. This is a cycle. So when some beings go to the material realm, you always have beings that are still in the blue ethers doing judging and in existing in the other ethers that I'll speak about in a few minutes. So what I'm saying is essentially that we exist all at the same time. So the blue ethers, this is where the Watchers dwell. They are said to have no eyes to see, no ears to hear. What that basically means is that they don't judge, they don't make judgments. They just simply observe creation. They're here for research purposes. And when we were in that state, you have to remember, we were not physical, we were not material. So a lot of what you read about, like when you read about the 24 scientists in the Bible, for instance, a lot of parts in the Bible they have physical elements and then spiritual elements. Sometimes you're reading about spiritual elements and they use physical characters. So the 24 scientists in the Bible, or the 24 elders is what they actually call them. The 24 elders in the Bible, they exist in the blue ethers originally. Now they do have a replica council of 24 that I spoke of in other videos that exist in the center of the earth. But they simply duplicate what they do on the blue ethers in the spiritual world. You have to remember you have the physical world and the spiritual world. So the blue ethers is where the spiritual world exists and where the judges exist in the spiritual world. Then we slowed down our vibration and we began to slow down even more. We existed in what's called the yellow ethers. Now, for all my people that have studied a lot of Kabbalah and a lot of the Aquarian Gospel and some people that have studied the Circle 7, you may know what I'm talking about. On this one, this is where they talk about creative fate. And I've done videos on creative fate as well. But I've never really comprised a whole video speaking on ether in general. So creative fate is the realm where souls are given the ability to create things, the ability to use their judgment, or I guess you could say the things that they judge and the data that they've judged, they can use this data to begin to create things for themselves. So creative fate is where things become selfish. When you talk about the ego exists on two realms. It exists on the material realm, but there is ego associated with creativity. Because you create, the ego means the mask or the self. So you create based off of who you are as a person. This is where individuality comes into play. See, on the blue ether level, there is no individuality when you deal with the blue ethers. They work more so in groups. They work together. But when you get into the yellow ethers, this is where things become independent. This is where we separate. Essentially is what happens. So that's the yellow ethers. And I'm going to get to materialism and my question about, what the sheik had taught me. So just bear with me for a second. So the yellow ethers, this is, like artists and people that are into all kind of spiritual work. I mean, even spiritual readers, even athletes, and like different people of that sort. People that are into competition. All of it exists. Some of it exists in yellow ethers, and then the rest of it exists in what's called the red ethers, which is the last or the most densest phase. And this is where humanity is at right now. For the most part, this is where we became material beings. See, our soul is comprised of the yellow ethers. Our soul is like when we die, we can still exist as an individual in the yellow ethers. This is how we still, like when we talk about reincarnation and souls making their transition and X, Y, and Z, some people can get stuck in what's called the yellow ethers. This is similar to when the Catholics talk about purgatory. So the blue ethers, that's like heaven. You see, the yellow ethers, this goes into the middle point. This is like purgatory. You still have an ego, you still have a self, but it's more so your memories are attached to what you made your habitual patterns and your obsessions. Your ego is attached to that, so you still can have an ego even when you transition. That's right. You still can be attracted to material things even. This is why you have to come back, because you get energy from it though. So it's like the reason why you may be attached to material things is different. So the yellow ethers, before I get into the red ethers, the yellow ethers are where certain beings exist that are like lesser beings. They aren't like gods, I guess is what you could say. And these beings, they're gods. Let me rephrase that, but they aren't like you talk about like the Most High or the ultimate creator that created everything or the source. They aren't those type of gods. They have egos. These are guys that you deal with when you do rituals for self-gain, like rituals for money, things of that nature. You got to put that out there. You got to understand you are dealing with beings from the yellow ethers that have egos. Some of them may even trick you because they're trying to get that energy. So you got to remember that when you work with these particular entities, and this is getting to the question I asked the Grand Sheik about material things, and I'm going to get there. So when you work from the red ethers, because we come from the red ethers, and the red ethers is what all material is made from. Physical matter is made from the red ethers. You may wonder, well, why is it called red ethers and we see all of these different colors? Red is symbolic. So when I say red, I'm not just speaking of the color, but I'm speaking of the energetic, the vibration that red gives off. This is why when you get certain cars, and if you get a red car, guess what? You're going to pay more for insurance for that red car than you would have paid for a particular, for like a black car or yellow car or something like that. You're going to pay more insurance because they say red cars tend to get into more accidents. This is because red is associated with desire. So when we come from the red ethers and we do rituals, people that are more advanced, they go holler at beings from the yellow ethers to get things, because they can cheat. It's kind of like almost like having cheat codes. They can get stuff from the yellow ethers by just working rituals and things of that nature. However, this is where polarity comes into play though, because you may get things using your creative fate, called creative fate, which is what your soul is comprised of. You can use that to get stuff, but what you get, your material things have, of course, karma associated with it. So, say for instance, I get a bad looking female and she just bad, like, she just looking like damn Halle Berry, or, like somebody like that, like she just, somebody looking like, what's her name? Serena Williams, or, I want to do justice, or somebody, looking like, Miley Cyrus, or, just somebody, they got attraction, appeal to them. Guess what? I'm going to have karma and problems that come with being with this female. Every material thing has a positive and negative to it, so there's going to be karma associated with me being with this type of woman. I'm going to have to deal with men trying to get at her and X, Y, and Z, so I have to be ready for that and be willing to deal with the responsibilities that come with being with a particular female like that. Say, for instance, I get $1 million. I've talked about this before. I have to deal with the problems that will come with $1 million. This is what you have to deal with. So all of that goes into polarity. So some beings, they work with beings in the yellow ethers. Like when you talk about people selling their soul to the devil and all of that, Those are just beings that exist in the yellow ether. There's really, I'm not going to say there's no devil, because I mean there is, that's a whole other subject I can't really go into right now. But for the sake of this conversation, the devil is not who or what you think it is. Some being in the ground with a pitchfork. Is a lot more to it than that. So beings that are into like dark magic and all that type of stuff, they're just working with beings from the yellow ethers, and they call it dark, but it's not so dark. And then they bring this energy down here to the red ethers or whatever, and they get things. And this is why he said that, yeah, the ethers are very murky, he said, associated with the material things. And this is because material things all have like blood associated with them. This is why they talk about blood sacrifice. Wars are associated with the red ethers. This is stuff that we do on the material realm. We fight over things. We fight wars over things. This is all associated with the red ethers. So we get the knowledge of how to get this stuff from the yellow ethers, but we play it out here in the red ethers, which is where we are at now. So material, the more material you want to be, and the more material stuff you want to write into your will and manifest, the more you're going to have to deal with these murky, bloody ethers that material things are associated with. And it's okay if that's what you choose to experience, but remember, everything is written. This is the life that you chose. Like my man Nas said, it was written. So this is the life that you chose, so you can't feel bad about, because you chose this type of life when you get consequences based off of what you chose. You can still be in the red ethers, but work with beings in the blue ethers. This is higher up. But you will have to be in a state of non-judgment, in a state of observation, in a state of not associating, attaching to physical things. I mean, you wear a shirt because, of course, you want to wear a shirt out because you don't want to just walk around without a shirt on and naked because you don't want to get a ticket for a decent exposure, of course. But I'm just saying, you're not really attached to whatever you have on type of thing. It's just, these are just things, and you're very much not attached to these particular things, and you live your existence like that. This will kind of be like monks and people that are, into alternative lifestyles, like even backpackers. Like that'll be more example, a better example of a person that's into, I guess you could say, the blue ethers, or even some homeless people that don't care, homeless by choice type people. They're like, I'm not attached to these materials. These are just things. I'm just living my life for the experiences of what I'll see every day and just the information that I'll learn and collect and the data, but not making judgments on what will happen to me, positive or negative. So this is coming from the blue ethers. So he said that they're murky because material things, going back to the red ethers, material things, in order to get them, you gotta, if you want to have a lot of them, you're gonna make pacts with entities. Like everybody wants to be a millionaire and stuff like that. And they ask me, do these artists, like, do they worship the devil, or have they made a pact with some type of form of an entity? Sure they have. Sure they have. If you look at cars, like I'm sitting up here looking at a car right now, you'll notice they have these symbols on them. A lot of these symbols tie back to deities. Like I'm looking at a particular Dodge Magnum right now. The Magnum symbol to me looked like the Baphomet. Or the Ram symbol looks kind of like the, looks like the gold of Mendes, and talk about worshiping the gold and things of that nature. So you have these different symbols. These symbols tie into different beings. You see, you kind of like sell your soul to drive around in nice cars like that. You have to give something. It's very true. These beings you got to pay homage periodically to keep your material things coming in. They want your energy for whatever reasons they're using it for, because they're right there with you while you riding in the Lexus, getting the girls, busting the nuts and all of that. They coming in and out of your body, partaking in that experience with you. So they existed in this on the soul plane. So that's why he said the ethers associated with money are very murky. They're very hard to get. It's hard to keep money. Like once you get it, it's hard to keep it, and you got to fight it. I'm talking about if you got a lot of it. It's hard to keep it, and it's a science to keep it. You can keep it, but you got to get deep into the science of working with these yellow ethers and these red ethers. You need to master that thing if that's what your will and writing your will is about. That's what you want to be known for in this world, is being this materialist, which is okay. I'm not knocking you again. So that's what he meant by that. That's what he meant by that. And we have to essentially, as spiritual beings, we really have to experience all levels, so that we won't come back and we won't have to reincarnate back here on this particular plane again. We have to experience. This is why we came here. They say we failed because we slowed down our vibration. We became essentially lesser beings, and we had to look up to other beings to get what we need here, to get sustenance here. So that's my spill on the ethers, man. Like, just, I want to chop it up with you guys and let you know about these different nations, is what they are, that exist within the etheric plane. I thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I'm going to go ahead and shut down. And as always, peace and prosperity. To all my hood niggas again, we out.